Pat Olson alongside first-year head coach Chris Gerlufsen. The basketball season approaching. Coach, I know that your staff is a super important element. Obviously, you know, some people dispersed. Coach Golden went down to Florida, but you were able to retain Vinny McGee and Mike Plank. How important is it to have those guys back for consistency?
You know, so fortunate to be able to retain two guys who play huge roles in our program, you know, and guys who I have tremendous respect for, and got to do what we did last year alongside those guys. So for me to be able to keep, you know, Mike Plank, who, you know, has achieved at a high level in this profession, has coached at almost every level, and a guy who is a great relationship guy when it comes to our program. He spends a lot of time with our players. He was a big kind of conduit in what we did from a defensive standpoint last year, and just a guy who knows me and has spent a lot of time around me, and that's so important. And so I feel super comfortable with Mike, and glad that he can elevate his position on staff and continue to advance in the coaching profession. And then Vinny McGee, a guy who is elite when it comes to player development, but also, again, it's big on the relationship parts for me, making sure our staff really relates to our players. And he's another guy that kind of connects the dots in that regard, and somebody who I trust, you know. And I said, if I was ever fortunate enough to get this, I wanted to do it with people that I know, you know, and people that I had prior relationships with, and both those guys are guys that I feel really strongly about.
And you bring in two new assistant coaches. Tell the viewers a bit about them.
Yeah, Jay Duncan comes to us from SMU, a guy who spent the last 10 years at SMU, but had stops at Villanova before that. He's been around Hall of Fame coaches. You know, has had a chance to work under Jay Wright, to work under Larry Brown, and Tim Jankovic is a hell of a coach, all three of them. And just the fact that he got to spend so much time with those guys who have won a lot of games, number one, but have done it the right way too. And so I'm, you know, counting on Jay a lot. I think he's somebody who will have a great voice within our program. I think he will, a guy that can wear a lot of hats from a recruiting standpoint to a player development standpoint and from a coaching standpoint. And that's what I want, guys that are well-rounded. And so super excited to add him and his family to the group, and then also adding Kyle Bankhead, who, as you know, you called some of his games when he was at Gonzaga, and a guy who achieved at a high level as a player in this league, but also as coach in this league. So he knows what it takes to win in the WCC, and a guy, again, who's just kind of grinded it out. And I do well with guys like that. I think there's no job too big or too small for him, and a guy, again, who I expect to have a major role and a big voice in what we do.
All right, alongside Coach Gerlufsen, I'm Pat Olson on USFDons.com.